Welcome to episode 2 of our spring workshop I call Details, and today we're focusing on linen. I've got 2 really great patterns for you. The treacle, which I'm wearing, which is a pieced garment that has so much flavor, and lots of detail in the piecing of this garment. And I also use 2 different weights, so you're going to have fun making that. And then we have this fabulous tunic I called SQUEET, and it's very simple. It's got these wavy lines and a great sleeve. This is fabulous. So sewing with linen is so awesome. You know it, and for beginners it's a great fabric to use. So we'll be covering that and how to stitch with linen. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started.
I am so excited about this episode because we will be talking about linen. And you all know that I love linen. Linen just sews beautifully. The woven nature of the fabric makes it really lovely to sew. It's one of the best fabrics to sew with. If you're a beginner, I would recommend linen. It is soft and gorgeous and accessible. Sometimes can be expensive. There are all kinds of linen. There's a linen cotton, which washes up, but not as soft as 100% linen. There are different weights of linen, different finishes. Some are woven, so they, with different threads, so they've got some texture in them. You can get beautiful prints now that weren't always available, with a painterly kind of even watercolor art printed onto the fabric. Really gorgeous. And I see a lot of overalls on Pinterest. And if you like florals, it's readily available. A little bit more expensive, I will say. There's embroidered linen. This is almost a gauze, and it has some really beautiful little embroidered cotton. It looks like cotton embroidery. It might be even linen embroidery thread, but I'm not sure on this one. It's an old piece. Linen is great to ruffle. We do a lot of garments with our ruffling, and you know that I love raw edges. So the linen frays beautifully, and if you secure it, which I'll show you how to do, it's just wonderful. On this particular piece, we actually ran a zigzag stitch all the way around the edge so it didn't ruffle, it didn't fray. So you can do that, and it's nice because you still get sort of a little bit of a raw edge, but it's finished. And we did the top here as well. This one, we just ran also a zigzag stitch. Zigzag stitch is preferable, or straight stitch about 1/4 of an inch to even 1/2 an inch above the edge, and you'll get a little raw edge, like so. I love it. Linen can be wrinkly, but if you press it, and one of our brilliant club members, she actually, I know her personally, Jan, and she washes her linen in hot water and a hot dryer and then presses it, and somehow she gets, quite a smooth. Her linen, when she wears a garment, it doesn't look all wrinkled. It looks pressed and really beautiful. She's an amazing sewer. And then the different weights. This is a gauze. It's translucent. It's really beautiful. This is the tala made up in the gauze. And it's a wonderful throw-on dress. You have to wear something underneath. This slip is amazing. It's the echelon. And you see that wonderful finish on the bottom. Beautifully made. And this is a great slip piece. And so my favorites for linen out of our patterns, I mean, you can make anything in linen. I'm wearing the Quattro, and you can see we applicate this piece onto it and let it ruffle, or I'm sorry, have this raw edge. And you can see in the back, and even on the sleeves. I love the threads. I love the look of it. This is a great piece. I enjoy it. Even the piece that's stitched onto this garment has raw edges. So with the different weights, you know, going from the gauze, then you go to all the way up to a much heavier weight. This is a heavier weight and it's stiff. This is probably about a 7 ounce. The lightweight, which I suggest for your slips and your ruffles, because if you make it in a medium weight or heavier, the dress is just way too heavy. We once made a sugar slip with all the ruffles in a medium weight, and you couldn't wear it. It was just so heavy. So the other idea I have, if you don't want lightweight can be a little translucent, so you could make your main body of the sugar slip in a medium weight and then do the ruffles in a very lightweight. A lightweight's like 2.8 ounces, something like that. Medium weight is like a 5 ounce. And I've got two here. This beautiful soft washed signature linen from fabricstore.com is gorgeous, medium weight, and then we have our very lightweight here. So very pretty, beautiful colors, and just feels luscious. I love making my bed linens in linen too, because it's just so soft, and the more you wash it, the more it just lasts and lasts and lasts, and it gets softer and softer. So, welcome to episode 2 of Spring Details Workshop. And I'm excited to be making linen dresses with you today with lots of details. For the treacle, I chose 2 different linens. One is the medium weight. This is Pearl Gray, Fabric Store, Signature. That's what it's, Signature finish. It's got this rough, sort of washed look. And Gray Whisper in the lighter fabric. So they're slightly different grays. I wanted just a slight change in the color. So it's subtle. And this is my lighter weight, which is beautiful and will hang nicely. So what I'm going to do, and you can do this in any way, you could do it in many colors. The pattern looks complicated, but it's not. It's just a few pieces more than the average. Here's our drawing of the dress, so you can see all the seam work. This is just seaming, you know, it's nothing more complicated. It's a wider dress. I cut these small for me, and it's got a drop shoulder. The bodice comes like this, and you're going to cut 2, one for the back, following the back neckline, and one for the front, following the front neckline. This piece gets attached to this piece. So there's my armhole, and it's a wider piece. So when it's together, there's 3 parts to it. excuse me, 4 parts, because we're going to add this little puff. So it's a dramatic dress. It's a wide dress with a lot of shape, and it's meant to drape. So I would use lighter weight fabrics. And if you're doing like me, you can have some medium weight fabric with the lighter weight. So I'm always breaking the rules. So for my little puff piece, I'm going to make it in the lighter weight, because that'll hang nicely. This side of the dress, where that puff will go, I'm going to make in the medium. My pockets will be in medium weight because you need pockets to wear. And then the piece that's going to go down the side, I'm going to make it in the lightweight. So I think it's going to look really pretty. And you're going to cut 2 of each piece. And if you're using linen, linen also has, there's a right side and a wrong side, but you can't tell. I can't tell. So I use both. But if you're using a fabric with a right side and a wrong side, make sure that you're cutting 2 opposing pieces for the larger pieces, because your front and back are the same except for the neckline. So I'm going to fold my fabric in half lengthwise, selvage to selvage, so we have 2 layers. So once I have that folded properly, I'm going to cut this piece, and then we will have a front and a back. And I'm going to repeat that for my puff side, and then I'm going to do the same with the gray linen. So I've cut all my pieces out. I cut my bodice out. And basically what I did was I cut around the whole outer edge, including the back neckline. And then I folded the front in half, and I used my pattern to figure out this, to figure out where to cut the front. I marked there, and then I followed that line around to cut a deeper neckline. You can cut it lower if you prefer. I don't like things too low, and with this dress you could go a little lower because it's a lot of dress. Okay, I'll flip that around. Make sure that both your pieces, so there's my front and my back, and then the lower piece, which I've marked on the pattern, A, B, C, and so forth. So we're going to put this piece onto my bodice piece. I have my sleeves and my pockets. We'll put on pockets next. So first step, we're going to put it onto the bodice. So I'm going to fold this piece downward, which is my front, and I'm going to pin this in place. And then on my back side, make sure that I'm doing this correctly. I'm going to put these 2 right sides together. So I'm going to pin those in place and stitch them. Then the next thing we're going to do, this is the other side. So I have my bubble, which looks like that. And that's going to go in place on this side of the dress. So I'm going to fold that. This is a curved seam. And I'm placing this piece, right sides together, onto the back side. So basically the front and the back are exactly the same. So you've just got to manage your pieces and make sure you're putting them right sides together so that you have an opposing front and back. So I'm going to stitch these and then we will put the pockets on. I'm getting excited because the dress is starting to come together. I've pinned my pockets in place. This is the front side, and you see the matching back side. And I've put pockets in place. They look a little low, so I'm going to raise them for my short arms. And this side has its billowy piece on the side, which is going to soften and hang really beautifully, giving this garment a lot of personality. And basically, for beginners, you place your pocket right sides together, right side of the fabric with the right side of the pocket, and you're just going to stitch it on using your 5/8 of an inch. And then you're going to place it that way and press the seam allowance towards the raw edge and the pocket outward. Then you're going to top stitch along the pocket edge, 1/4 of an inch from the seam. Gives it a nice finish, and it also makes it turn nicely into the garment. And my pockets look great. Stitched them on, pressed, and stay stitched. I also stay stitched around the necklines because linen can fray as you're working with it and stretch out. So when you're working with these pieces, this just maintains your neckline so that it doesn't stretch out. I've also noticed this, the signature linen. I don't know if some of you have worked with it before, but it has, it stretches a lot. It moves a little bit. So if you're a beginner, I would suggest not using the signature until you're a little bit more comfortable sewing with the linen. It's easier to sew with a nice crispier linen. So now I am pinning my central line or my diagonal line down the front of the garment. It's actually quite an easy dress. It's not. It looks more complicated than it is. It really is lovely and floaty. And I really like the way the different linens and the different weights are working out. It creates this very soft feel. It's lovely. So we'll sew that diagonal on both pieces, and then we're going to sew the shoulder seams and put the sleeves in. So I bound the neckline, and that's easy to do. And it looks nice and clean. And I used the contrast fabric for the binding just to add some character, because you can just see it. And then I hemmed my sleeves. And I put a binding on the bottom of the dress, just like I did around the neck, which anchors the hemline and just gives it some weight so that it hangs nicely. That's a gorgeous dress with lots of personality. So I hope you've enjoyed the treacle. It's really well worth it. I put a little Annabelle slip underneath so that can stick out on the side because the hemline is very asymmetrical. So for a beautiful asymmetrical dress, and there's a lot you can do with this dress in color, and I think it's just a fun piece. You could make this in a cotton, a floral, and a solid, or mixed patterns. I'm in love with this little dress. I called it Squeet, and it was inspired by something I saw online. And I thought, what a lovely just throw on tunic. You can make this in linen or cotton. We have pockets. This linen is gorgeous. I'm using a lightweight linen. So we have side panels with the armhole. They are sleeves. I've marked with my chalk where the top of my pocket will go. So we're going to pin those in place. I've got binding for my neckline. My sleeves. And we have this little cap that's going to go onto the sleeve to give the sleeve a little bit of weight and some detail. And then the front panels are cut the same except for the neckline. Center panel is lots of shape here. So we have a front and a back. First thing we're going to do is the pockets. And then we're going to do our side seams and add the panels to get together to the front and the back. So very easy. So let's get started. When you add the side panel on, it just gives this beautiful line with that curved edge. And when you stitch it, you just ease it in. It's quite easy. You just follow the fabric. Linen is very giving, and it has some stretch to it because of your curved lines. So it's easy to put on. We'll do the other side. Then I top stitched it too, and I pressed it. And always press your seams. Again, it anchors the stitches into the cloth, so it becomes part of the cloth. I repeated that process for the back panel, so now I have two full panels, back and the front. And I'm going to place them and pin the shoulders together, because our next step would be to add the sleeves. So I'm matching up the seams in the center of the shoulder so that they're nice and even. Then I'm going to stitch the shoulders. My dress is right sides together, and then we're going to add the sleeves. Before we add the sleeves, so we have this really interesting flap, and it looks like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hem the top edge, and I'm going to hem the sides and the bottom edge. And then we will actually stitch it onto the sleeve. The way to do this is to use your iron. It's got a slightly curved edge. So I folded it over as I'm pressing it, 1/4 of an inch, and then 1/4 of an inch again. And then I repeat that for the bottom edge and the side. And I also pressed the top side. But what I did was I then stitched it down on the sides and the bottom. And that upper curve I just left folded neatly. Here's my 1/4 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch. Because that is what we're going to pin onto the sleeve. And here's my sleeve, and I've added this panel onto it. So when the sleeve sits in the shirt, this is actually it's meant to just drape a little bit and have a little flavor and a little flair to the sleeve. Now when you put it on, here's my sleeve. And here's my panel. and there's a placement mark on your sleeve depending on what size you did. You want to pin it centered. Find your center mark and the center mark of this. It is irregular. It's meant to be that way in shape. And then your points will go over the curve. And I left that for you to trim off because it all depends on what size you're using. One has to have a magnet when one sews for our pins. This is a fantastic piece. I don't know where this came from, but it was in the studio, and it's a magnet at the end of this, whatever this is. I think it's broken off something, but it works. But any magnet will do. I'm always dropping my pins on the floor. And if you have carpet, you know how aggravating that is. I sew on a wood floor. It's nice and easy to clean up. I've had my home studios with carpet in it, and I didn't have much choice. That's where I sewed. And it's much better to have a floor. Okay, so I've pinned it, and now I'm just going to stitch across here, which is where I pinned that folded line. And that's what I did here. And then once that's sewn on, you're going to trim off those corners so that you have your sleeve. And I actually basted that in place. So now we have our shape of our sleeve. Our next step is to place the sleeves into the armholes. So we find our center point of our sleeve. And I put a little crease in there, center point of the sleeve. This sleeve and this armhole do not have a front and a back. Just makes it easier. So here's my shoulder seam and my armholes. And like a lot of my patterns, the armhole is the same for the front and back. This works on a little bit of oversized dresses because there's just room to do so. Instead of cutting traditionally, and we do some sleeves that way, this way, where the front seam, the front curve is deeper than the back sleeve curve. So the sleeve has to be cut the same way. So it's a slightly different shape and curve for the front and back. But in this pattern, as well as the treacle, it is cut on the fold, so it's the same for the front and back of the curve on the sleeve. And I continue pinning my sleeve in place, capturing that little added detail inside. That's that flap. And now I continue pinning. The sleeve fits in. I did sew the other one, so you'll get an idea. There is the sleeve. It's not a huge sleeve. You don't want too much of a puffy sleeve on this kind of body, but it really is lovely and adds a great flavor to the sleeve. And it's all neatly tucked in there and sewn on here. So it's a great detail without being too technical or complicated. Then you're going to fold your garment. Once your sleeves are in, you're going to fold your garment inside out. And you're going to sew side seam as well as the sleeve and the pocket all in one go. I've done it here. It'll show you. I used that white stitch. So I stitched my sleeve in, and then I stitched the undersleeve, making sure to pin the pieces together at the undersleeve, going down to the pocket. You can see it. I've got this white here as just an overstitch for my fraying, but I went and cut a corner, pivoted around to my darker thread and down. We sew easy here at Sew Tina Gibbons for dramatic results. And then I pressed the hemline and pinned it. So that's just like a neat hem. We're going to do the same for the hem, and then we're going to bind the neckline. So for the binding of the neckline, it's relatively easy. I'm going to use a strip of binding and make sure that your binding will fit your neckline. Have a little extra. This is perfect. And I have a quick and easy way. We're going to press the edge in, fold that in, and then we're going to press our binding in half.